Hi everyone, I am here today with my July reading review. In these videos I kind of give you a wrap up of everything that I've read during that month, but also kind of how my booktube channel went and just everything about my July month basically in a bookish way. So I always like to start off with just some basic stats. So at the beginning of July I had 763 subscribers and by the end I'd got 777. I read 8 books, go me. I uploaded 16 videos. At the beginning of the month I'd got 60,794 views and by the end of the month I'd got 62,674 views. And my most popular video from the month before was my June releases TBR. You guys really seem to like these. I've just sat and filmed my August releases, so hopefully you enjoy that one too. So on to what that means for my overall TBR. I bought 4 physical books in July, 3 Kindle books, 19 NetGalley books, and as I read 8 books, this means that I'm only adding 18 books to my TBR from July. Now that sounds like a lot, but it's actually my second lowest figure on here, being beaten only by June, which was 13. So, I mean, on my worst month, April, I added 41 books to my TBR. I'm not someone who worries about trying to kind of decrease my TBR. I just think it's quite fun to track how fast I'm increasing it because I don't care how big my TBR is. It's just more books to choose from at the end of the day. And while I probably won't read them all before I die, it'll be interesting to kind of just keep an eye on all the same. So I read 3 physical books in July, which is actually really good for me. Other months I've read none or 1, so I killed it on the physical book front. I didn't read any Kindle books though, and I managed to read 4 NetGalley books and finish 1 audiobook, so I feel like it was quite kind of like a rounded month overall. I did a lot of book acquiring, I did a lot of book reading, I got through some physical books, which is a rarity for me, and I also managed to get through some of my NetGalley kind of obligations, so it was a good month. I did take part in the Owls Readathon during July, and I think that will probably have kind of helped give me that extra kick. I don't normally do very well in readathons, but I think a month ongoing one that's got like quite a bit of flexibility for me really worked out well. So we'll, let me just get comfy. We'll give you an Owls rundown at this point too, just to kind of get you an idea of how I did in that. So, Ancient Runes, you had to read a book with a symbol on the cover. I was going to Ace of Shades by Amanda Foody, but I didn't actually get round to that one in the end, so never mind. Arithmancy was to read a book with a number on the cover or in the title. I was going to read The Family at Number 13 by S.D. Monaghan, but I didn't bother reading that either. Then Astronomy was to read a science fiction novel, and I listened to on audiobook A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. I really enjoyed that book. It was one of the books I got to, and yeah, I'm so glad I finally picked it up because that is a book that gets a lot of hype, and I was a little bit worried about it because I'm not someone who's into sci-fi, so I'm really pleased that that one happened for me. To complete my care of magical creatures, I had to read a book that includes magical creatures or features a magical creature on the cover. So I decided to read Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, and I managed that one too. So to complete charms, I had to read a fantasy book. So I picked The Tales of Beedle the Bard, and I read that one. Defense Against the Dark Arts was to read a book featuring or about secret societies or clubs. So I picked Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, and I read that one. Divination was to read a book featuring prophecies, and I'd picked Dead Girls by Abigail Tarslin, but I didn't get to that one. Herbology was to read a book with a nature-related word in the title, so I'd picked The Stormkeeper's Island by Catherine Doyle, but I didn't get to that one either, and I'm quite gutted about that one because I probably would have flown through it if I'd got to it. History of Magic was to read a historical fiction, so I read The Sapphire Widow by Dinah Jeffries. Muggle Studies was to read a Muggle non-fiction book, and I read The Stranger on the Bridge by Johnny Benjamin. Potions was to read a book about or with alchemy, so I picked A Secret History of Witches by Louisa Morgan, and I got to that one. Transfiguration was to read a book that deals with transfiguration, shapeshifting, or a similar theme, or a book with a cat on the cover. So I picked Renegades by Marissa Mayer, but I never got to it. So, how did this mean that I did in my owls? Basically, the gradings were T for troll, D for dreadful, P for poor. Those were all fails. Then to get a pass, you could get acceptable, exceeds expectations, or outstanding. So troll was you just didn't even show up, so you didn't take part. Dreadful is start but don't finish any books. Poor is to finish only one book. So I did better than all of those, so I passed my owls. To get an acceptable, you need to pass at least 2. I passed more than 2. To get exceeds expectations, you had to get... Oh, I'm so uncomfortable. To get exceeds expectations, you had to get 3 owls. And to get an outstanding, you had to get at least 5. I got 7, so I'm really pleased with myself. 7. Go me. It's probably the best readathon I've ever done. So also, I did look up, if you remember, my career, like, through a quiz, what my career would be if I was in the wizarding world. And I got a writer for the Daily Prophet. So for that, it is recommended that you get Charms, History of Magic, Muggle Studies, plus one of your own choices. And obviously I completed all of those and a few extra choices. So I am well on my way to becoming a writer for the Daily Prophet. And it all depends how my newts go at this point, which are going okay, I've got to say. We're nearly midway through the month and I'm doing all right. So on to kind of giving you a bit more of an idea of how I felt about each book, aka my wrap up. So for The Tales of Beedle the Bard by Professor Dumbledore, I wasn't massively into this book as a whole because I'm really not someone who enjoys short stories or kind of fairy tales, and that's basically what this is, but a Wizarding World version. But what I did really love was the artwork in this. There's so many examples of like just a typical nice page, just like how it's presented is just amazing. But yeah, the only story I really enjoyed was The Tale of the Three Brothers, which is obviously the one from the Deathly Hallows. And there's another picture of that one. And yeah, I enjoyed that, but the rest I could take or leave. I think the thing that really sold me with this book as well was at the end of each story you've got kind of a section from Dumbledore, like his notes about each story. I enjoyed that more than every single story every single time because like Dumbledore is just such an insightful writer. The notes in this were so creative. I'm really quite kind of impressed with J.K. Rowling and just how creative this book was as a whole. So yeah, I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Another physical book that I read in July was, of course, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. I'm not going to go into this too much because I am going to be filming a reread review for this book later this week, so keep your eyes out for that. But I was impressed by how much I ended up enjoying this. I didn't think that this was one of my favourites from the series, and now it definitely is, and obviously the ending just broke my heart into tiny pieces. Speaking of getting my heart broken into tiny pieces, I also read The Deathly Hallows in July. And oh my goodness, I'd forgot just how many people die in this. Like, a couple of key ones I'd obviously remembered, but so many other people died that kind of felt really bad for forgetting about. And I just finished this feeling totally heartbroken and ripped into tiny pieces. Needless to say, I gave both the Harry Potter books 5 stars each, obviously. So what other books did I finish in the month of July? Skin Deep by Liz Nugent, which I uploaded a individual spoiler-free book review of yesterday. No, the day before. Yesterday when I'm filming this, but the day before for you. I will leave that linked in the cards in case you want to check that out. But that book blew me away. It is such a clever and different psychological thriller that really takes you on quite the journey, because you start off in a scene that is towards the end of the book where there is a dead body in an apartment, and then before you ever really get any answers, the next thing you know, you're this person, it's like the person in the apartment's like childhood. You're in her childhood, and it's like But I want to know what, and you have to work through her entire life to find out why there's a dead body in her apartment. And after just a few pages in, you really kind of get sucked into the story of her life and stop worrying about the apartment bit, knowing that you'll get there in the end, because her life just becomes that interesting and that messed up. If you get caught up in her life, you may as well just end your life now, because she just ruins everything. And it's a really interesting character study too, on whether she is how she is because of her experiences or whether she's just innately evil. It's a fabulous read, highly recommend it. Gave it 5 stars, and I received that one from the publishers via NetGalley. So I also read The Sapphire Widow by Dinah Jeffries. This is the second Dinah Jeffries book I have picked up, and again I received this one from the publishers via NetGalley, and I enjoyed this, but not quite as much as The Tea Planter's Wife, which I read a few years ago and blew me away, but this one was still really good. It's a historical fiction set in 1930s Ceylon, and it's really kind of messed up in places too, because the main character's husband dies in a place he shouldn't even be in. He tells her he's gone sailing. He's actually in a car driving somewhere else and gets himself in a car crash and dies. So she's kind of like, well, why was he there instead of there? What was he doing? And all these secrets come spilling out, and it just becomes one great big massive mess for her, and you honestly feel so sorry for her, because it's almost like she didn't know her husband at all, and she has to pick up the pieces, and some of them are very big pieces to pick up, but it leads to her finding a new romance of her own, and it's just a really beautiful book, and I gave it 4 stars. Another NetGalley read was A Secret History of Witches by Louisa Morgan, and this is a historical fiction that's kind of a bit paranormal, because you've got these witches like of the traditional kind, so they've got like a grim, why can't I think of the word? Come on, how many years have you watched Vampire Diaries? Grimoire. I can't think. One of those really old kind of massive witch books. And yeah, it's just, again, such a different read for me, because this follows like every sort of 100 pages or so the next generation in the family. So you start off with, like, at the very beginning of the book, the grandmother dying, and they all have to run away because the grandmother was murdered, because they found out she was a witch. So they all have to kind of run away and find somewhere new to live, and they think for a while that no one has picked up the kind of witch gene, as it were. And then as this girl grows older, she realises that she has got the power, and so then it's just every generation from then on, you get to know each individual witch. They have a child, or you get to the point where they've not even had a child, and it just jumps to the child's perspective each time, and each time it's just really heartbreaking that you're leaving that character behind. But some of the time, and indeed most of the time, you still get to see that parent that you've followed the last 100 pages, so there is that. And some of them do really great things with their power, but some of them are just truly just innately evil, I think, and get ideas above their station. But yeah, one of the witches even manages to help with the kind of World War II effort, so that was a really interesting spin towards the end of the book. It's not a spoiler to say that, but it was a really interesting spin, and it throws quite some interesting and weird ideas into the mix. And at first I was not really down for that, but actually as it went on I was like, okay, this works, I like this. So if I've got you intrigued, you need to pick this up, because it's a fantastic historical fiction, and I gave this 5 stars. As I mentioned earlier, I listened to The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. I can't remember if I said, so I just want to quickly mention that I also gave that 5 stars, as I did absolutely adore it. I was listening to that at the same time as reading The Secret History of Witches, and it was just so bizarre to have 2 totally different things going on that yet both felt like kind of character studies. It was really bizarre, and I really enjoyed the experience. And the final book I read in July was The Stranger on the Bridge by Johnny Benjamin and Britt Pfluger. And this is a non-fiction about a guy who, I can't remember what age he was now, is it 20, 21? Just feels like he can't go on anymore. He's been sectioned with like schizophrenia of some type, I can't remember the exact type. and he just doesn't know what to do with himself. So he manages to sneak himself out of hospital, make his way onto Waterloo Bridge, and is about to throw him off when a stranger who's going past manages to talk him down. And this is all about, obviously, how Johnny got to that point in his life to want to throw himself off the bridge, but also what happened afterwards in his search for that stranger. And this is actually based upon a documentary that Johnny did as well. And I'd never heard of that. And now I feel like I've been living under a rock because it's like everywhere. He's worked with Prince William. It's like he's done so much work for awareness of schizophrenia and other mental illness. And I don't know how I hadn't come across this before. But this was a really eye-opening read, again, that I got from the publishers via NetGalley. And I also gave this 5 stars. So I had an excellent reading month in July. I had the time of my life. It really reminded me just why I love reading so much, because everything I read was so totally different and yet so totally amazing. Like, across the genres, I was like 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. It was fantastic. So I had an excellent month. Let me know how your reading month in July went. Whether you've read any of these books, whether you want to read any of these books, just drop me a comment down below. I would love to hear about your July reading month. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe by clicking the image of me if you want to see more book reviews and other bookish content from me, and I will see you soon. Bye bye!